What is up, gamers? RGG released another trailer for their next IP, Stranger Than Heaven, and I could not be more excited. So you know what that means. Yep, it's time to talk about a different video game that released a decade ago. Woo! Yakuza 0 Director's Cut is the latest title to release within the Yakuza or Like a Dragon series, being marketed as the definitive version of a now 10-year-old game, and has revitalized the Yakuza 0 experience with new additions, such as an English dub, new scenes, UI changes, and most importantly, a brand new mode. The good news for you is that I basically lived in the original Yakuza 0, and I can notice even the slightest difference. So even if you've played either version of Yakuza 0, this video will have quite a few changes that I can guarantee you didn't notice. With that said, let's get into some of the juicy details now. Firstly, when you open the game, you'll notice some new additions. Most obvious is the initial Sega screen is no longer a blinding white, but instead black. Also, I think they reduced the volume of the sound effect so it doesn't kill you anymore. After that, we get a new credit, Speech Graphics. This is the company that created the software used to reanimate the mouths in this game's English and Chinese dubs. This software has been used on a few other large IPs, but after looking into them, I still have no clue which ones. Now, after that, we have the modern RGG Studios intro, then the intro cinematic with the song Bubble, restored from the original Japanese release. The other song's better, by the way, don't at me. Also, it didn't get every single video on the planet claimed, but whatever. Then we have the new title screen, also now a dark color instead of blinding white. And then we get our first major change, the menu. This screen would seem to have all the usual suspects, but in actuality, there are three things missing from this menu, and those are the two-player versus minigames, the online versus minigames, and finally the online mode. These were used for playing minigames like poker and mahjong online, playing stuff like pool and darts in couch co-op, and viewing your online rankings, but I think that last one's been broken for a long time. Instead, for the Director's Cut, we now have two new options, Red Light Raid and the ability to view the full credits. Considering Red Light Raid is the new multiplayer mode they want people to play, it makes sense to phase out the older modes. Now let's move into a well-received addition, the new saving system. I know it's been repeated by everyone on the planet by now, but in the Director's Cut, you can save anywhere within the pause menu instead of needing to use the phone booths. On top of that though, the game actually auto-saves intermittently, and when it happens, you can see a little icon in the bottom right. This feature may be just as important and is probably going to be understated, so I just wanted to shout that out. I know that I've already been saved by it a few times, so this is a flat-out direct improvement that I can appreciate. That's not all we got for the save system though, because now when loading and creating saves, you can see a ton more info about your existing save files compared to the original game. Previously, all you got was the save slot, the date and time you saved, the character you saved as, and the chapter. Now, you get all of the old stuff on top of the playtime you have in that save file, as well as the amount of money you have as both Kiryu and Majima in-game. This change is incredible for any player who is unorganized or someone like me who has the tendency to save a lot in case I need to return for footage. Unfortunately, Director's Cut on Switch 2 is limited to 30 save slots, but I am holding out hope that the PC version will have more. Now, onto what is frankly this game's sole reason for existing, the new dubs and translations. This game can now be played with English and Chinese dubs, and the Chinese dub has existed previously, but it was never available outside of China, so hooray, I guess? Plus, with those dubs, we've got added text options of French, German, Italian, and Spanish, plus Korean, which I think is new, on top of the already existing Japanese and traditional or simplified Chinese. Also, I forgot to mention English for some reason. On the topic of the text though, there is now a new font, and it looks nearly identical, but a few letters have slightly different styling and the text is a little bit more spaced. This new font is a lot higher res and higher quality than the old one, but oddly enough, other text like the combat intro text is still low res when you examine it closely. And also on that topic, the text within Red Light Raid's character select screen is weirdly artifacted, so I guess not all of the text in the game was concerning to them. Anyway, another major UI element changed are the tip boxes. The new style is a mid-ground between Kiwami's tip boxes and Zero's previous tip boxes. And it should be noted that the old style is still used in the tutorials, just not in the overworld. Also, the one change I've noticed with the tip boxes is that when you unlock one of the Gandhara videos, the game now gives you a text reminder, which is awesome for whoever cares about that. Now, in the pause menu, I should should note there's also an online manual, and the QR code will send you to a website dedicated to teaching you the game. And this is a feature that was also present in the Kiwami Switch port, and I don't think it's used in any of the other games, but a lot of them do have manuals you can find somewhere online. Another very minor change is when swapping characters in the story, the recap segment now has English text reading previously in the tale of blank, instead of just the Japanese text used before. Lastly, one final text change may just be the most important one yet. When the player is introduced to the first Mr. Shakedown, we are told his name is Hiroya Egashira, and then in every following fight, his intro text also says Hiroya Egashira. Eagle-eyed players have noticed, however, that his health bar is instead labeled with Hiroki Egashira, and once you see this typo, you can't forget it. That is until today, as I am privileged to announce that they have finally fixed the Hiroki Egashira typo. Let's go! All jokes aside, the text changes have all been beneficial, except for this one weird part in chapter 10 where Nihara's text collides with the black bars. I don't know why that happens. Now, I'd like to take a second to discuss the dubs, but mainly English since that's what I played in. When playing in a dubbed version of the game, the characters' mouths will roughly match the words being spoken for a mostly accurate product.
Yeah, well, it could have a lot worse in store for us. If any of the lieutenants manage to get a hold of the empty lot, Kazuma-san is done for. A Pinky will look like child's play.
Some weird issues arise, like characters making weird expressions, but it does the job for something that I think was automated on audio alone, with maybe some touch-ups. Now, in terms of what is dubbed and what remained in Japanese, street encounter enemies speak Japanese, as well as random pedestrians, any minor characters in minigames, but most jarringly, your character also has Japanese combat sounds. Sometimes. It's a bit weird, but for example, Majima's slugger all-out swing audio is clearly Matt Mercer. But then his heat action audio is Hidenari Ugaki. I will also note that I think they even lowered the volume of these combat voice lines to make it harder to notice the constant back and forth. And in some cases, I can't be sure, but I swear they flat out removed some lines. Now, in terms of gameplay changes, there aren't many, but first, I should note that a trailer was recently released where they did some phone number gag, and it featured Kiryu and Majima doing the telephone club animation. And my first thought on seeing that was, holy shit, can Majima use the telephone club now? And the answer is no. They just did it for a joke. They just made that shit up. They completely lied. Now, on top of that, and this might just be an interesting Switch interaction, but the directional stick now counts as an input during QuickTime events. And while that may have existed in the Kiwami port and you might not care, this girl no likey. And that's it for the gameplay changes. Now, lastly, let's go over the brand new game mode, Red Light Raid. But just in case you want an ultra in-depth video on the mode, I'll be working on the quintessential Red Light Raid Master Guide in the coming week. So if you want to see that, just let me know in the comments or by leaving a like on the video. Also, if you're not subscribed and you want to see more videos in this style on the Yakuza or Like a Dragon series in the future, then a sub would be more than welcome. Anyway, back to Red Light Raid. In my theory video, I predicted that certain characters would be difficult to unlock, and I'm pleased to announce they're all reasonably easy, only requiring you to beat a certain stage in the Red Light Raid game mode to unlock them, but every character has to still be purchased using your earnings. Also, every character in the roster is purchasable from the jump, so I really have no idea what that description in the menu is referencing about unlocking more characters through the story. That's just not a thing, and this footage is filmed on my alt account with no story progress, just in case you're wondering. I feel like they just phrased it poorly, and they meant to say you can learn other characters' fighting styles by fighting them? Anyway, you purchase any character that's available, and everyone can have their level raised all the way to 5, using exponentially more money with each level. You select a map and then have to survive waves as you get drops around the map of random toughnesses and red drug drops that fill up your red light rage meter. When you activate the meter, you go into a state where interruption is almost non-existent and your attacks are faster and hit harder. On top of that, you seem unable to die in rage mode as well, but you can still have your health lowered to 0. If you pick up more rage drops while your meter's ticking down, it'll reset the counter, and if the round ends during your rage mode, the counter will pause between rounds. Finally, after winning the last stage, you reach the end, get your funds, and then spend that money to get another character or maybe some upgrades. That's a super fast generalization of the game mode, and I can give a full lowdown on everything everything you'd need to know in the more extensive guide. Now, finally, for last, I've saved the new cutscenes, because these are obviously spoilers, and so if you don't want spoilers, then skip ahead to the timestamp on screen. I also want to mention that all 5 of the new cutscenes are locked to 30 frames per second, and also have the ugliest lighting possible. So if it looks bad, then hey, you're getting the original experience. The first scene we see is the most controversial one, showing that Lee did in fact survive the car bomb. His wheelchair is being pushed around by the Chinese doctor, you can tell by the sleeves on his shirt, so we're left to assume that the doctor ended up paying the favor back and saving Lee. Now, dropping the whole fun fact bit for a second, this scene is genuinely so bad. And I don't know where to start. First, there is no way Lee could have survived that car bomb, and the game even acknowledges that by saying he's unlikely to survive his wounds. So why does this scene exist? Well, some completely random man shows up and tells Majima that he needs to protect Makoto, and also reminds Majima to fix her watch, completely avoiding all subtlety. And in a way, this scene kinda ruins Majima's character, because in the original, he decides to protect her and fix the watch of his own volition. But now, this scene recontextualized the events to seem like he only did those things because he was told to. Anyway, I also want to note the way this cutscene is activated is by walking into the front door of the Kijin Clan office, which is such a weird event trigger. I'm pretty sure they didn't have the ability to create a new event trigger in front of the office because they might need to have access to the engine, and maybe there's just some issues they ran into with that. But anyway, what I think actually happened is they shoved this cutscene into the loading screen when you're entering the office. Speaking of weird event triggers, the next scene is activated by walking into Cal Videos as Kiryu, and then you just teleport backwards and meet up with your old buddy, the Toko Credit president. Now, in fairness, this scene isn't as bad or reductive, and it's a little decent, until the part where they reveal why they added this scene. That's right, the sole reason they revived the Toko Credit president is to retcon him as the founder of Peace Finance. Oh my god, guys, he's talking about Peace Finance. Peace Finance. That one moneylender from Yakuza 1 and Kiwami. Oh my god, isn't that so cool? Like, epic reference. These scenes are so shoehorned in, and it kind of pisses me off because, again, they could have used this scene to fill in the space where you do nothing in chapter 13. Because even after this scene happens, you still have to do the whole wait 10 minutes thing, which again means this scene serves no purpose other than to make a Disney-style Marvel reference. The next scene is the one with Kuze, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't even want to watch this one back. I immediately wiped this from my memory. Kuze and Kiryu bond or some shit, which is crazy considering Kuze just had direct involvement with the death of his friend. The worst part about this scene, though, is that it actually replaces some of the old dialogue with the new worse one. So it actually does objectively make this section worse, even if you skip it. Next, there's the scene where Billiken calls Majima to talk about Nishtani, and they get real sad about Nishtani being dead. And then they make another weird reference to the passing of Nishtani's name. Again, zero subtlety and a pointless scene. Then finally, we get the scene with Nishiki and Kiryu in the car, discussing the events of the game and reminiscing. And for once, I can say, this scene is actually totally fine. It doesn't harm any of the existing story beats, and it's a cute moment between two brothers. What more could I want? Any scene with Kiryu and Nishiki having fun together before Kiwami is great, because I frankly don't think they got enough time together. Considering like the entire series rides off of the back of their dynamic is pretty unexplored, if I'm being honest. And with that, we've gone over pretty much everything new in the director's cut. I should also note that the file size of the Nintendo Switch 2 version of the game is 43.3 gigabytes, while the Steam version of Yakuza 0 is only 24.67 gigabytes. This game also doesn't have a physical release yet, and probably at this rate never will. So the question needs to be asked: is the director's cut worth it? And by the way, that's an with 3 question marks, because I really don't know how to feel. It should be said that Yakuza 0 is my favorite video game of all time, and I have spent over like 1,000 hours playing it across multiple platforms and languages to 100% completion. I never expected greatness, but at the very least expected RGG to respect what is, in my opinion, their best story. If this game released with only the new dubs and Red Light Raid, it would be a better game, and a definitive upgrade. But because of the new scenes, that status is brought into question. I might end up playing this version of the game again if it's brought to PC, but until then, I'm only coming back for Red Light Raid. And even Red Light Raid is pretty headache-inducing. Either way, I'm hoping this is not a sign of RGG's future, and I can only hope that Stranger Than Heaven will take steps in the right direction for the series. With that said, I now leave you with the single best line delivery in the English dub and bid you farewell.
Tomorrow, 5, on the roof. She said if I gave you the message, I could have the takoyaki. Can I have the takoyaki? Take it already.
Okay, I really like this delivery.